Chapter 120, Impart. This chapter is updated by novels.pl. A new student dared to tell her to not be arrogant. As a female devil, how could Huang Yanchen stand for that? Zhang Yuochen, do you dare to repeat that? You don't think I'll break both your legs and have you thrown out? Huang Yanchen extended her 5 fingers. Threads of genuine chi began to converge between them, and a small whirlwind formed in her palm. Zhang Yuochen remained calm and said softly, "Sister Huang won't need to do anything. I'm leaving now." Having said that, Zhang Yuochen headed to Earth number 1 and began to pack, preparing to move. He did not want to stay in the Dragon Martial Temple anymore. Huang Yanchen was entirely illogical. Staying with her had made Zhang Yuochen feel unsafe, as if his life could be threatened at any moment. Whoever married her in the future would be damned for 8 lifetimes. Junior apprentice brother, Sister Chen is just joking with you. Please don't take it to heart. Juan Muxingling caught up to and stood next to Zhang Yuochen. Narrowing her eyes, she revealed a stunning smile. Really? Zhang Yuochen glanced at Huang Yanchen. Huang Yanchen stood pencil straight in the distance. She worked to control her anger and squeezed out a smile. Of course I was only joking. Okay then. For Sister Juanmu's sake, I can teach you to practice the shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon. But whether or not you can practice it successfully depends on your talent. Zhang Yuochen wrote down the spell for the shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon, and handed it to Huang Yanchen and Juan Muxingling. Now, I can only give you the spell. As for the steps, it's impossible for me to draw its essence at my current cultivation. I can only practice and teach you at the same time. Zhang Yuochen spoke the truth. Although he was once a warrior at the completion of the Heaven Realm, he could only draw out the essence of martial techniques that were up to the low-class spiritual stage. The shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon was a superior class spiritual stage martial technique. Given his understanding of the martial technique, even if he managed to draw the steps, they would only have 10 to 20% of the essence. Practicing with those steps, Huang Yanchen and Juan Muxingling would not be able to successfully practice the technique. Huang Yanchen and Juan Muxingling took the written spell and read it together. In the beginning, they were very focused, but the more they read, the more shocked they became. Having finished reading the spell, Huang Yanchen's gaze was like 2 ice swords. She stared hard at Zhang Yuochen and said, "The spell is extremely exquisite. It is definitely not as simple as a low-class spiritual stage martial technique." Exactly what class of martial technique is this shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon? Can't say. Zhang Yuochen spoke again. "If you want to learn, then I will teach you sincerely. If you don't want to learn, please go back." "We will learn." Who says that they're not learning? I am definitely going to learn. Juan Muxingling naturally saw how powerful the shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon was. Even if she only partially succeeded, it would greatly increase her power in battle. Huang Yanchen's look was unsettled. "Xingling, you memorized the spell, right?" "Of course I remembered it." "Sister Chen, did you forget that if your spiritual power reaches level 20, you will remember everything you see?" Juan Muxingling smiled and replied. Huang Yanchen nodded and ripped the spell into pieces. She was very aware of the price of the shadow of the Royal Wind Dragon. If someone else were to see it, it would certainly bring them no end of trouble. Afterward, Zhang Yuochen demonstrated the 9 steps of the technique for them, and then explained the 81 different changes. Because Huang Yanchen and Juan Muxingling were both top prodigies, they were able to very quickly grasp the basics and learn through analogy, and they quickly began practicing. Zhang Yuochen practiced along with them and was clearly practicing faster. After night had fallen, Zhang Yuochen returned to Earth number 1. But Huang Yanchen and Juan Muxingling continued to practice the technique in the courtyard. They were no less obsessed with this martial technique than Zhang Yuochen was. Zhang Yuochen had only just reached the dawn state of the Black Realm, so his martial arts realm was comparatively low. He needed to spend a great deal of time practicing his genuine chi, and could only spend a limited time practicing martial techniques. Huang Yanchen and Juan Muxingling had already reached the completion of the Black Realm, and so they could spend all of their time practicing martial techniques. This was their advantage. After returning to the training room, Zhang Yuochen entered the time and space spinal. He consumed a triple purity genuine chi pill, and began to absorb it. He was not lacking in pills and could eat them like candy. As long as they increased his practicing speed, it was fine. After practicing for a day inside the time and space spinal, Zhang Yuochen absorbed 18 triple purity genuine qi pills and could clearly feel that the genuine qi in his qi lake had substantially increased. He had finally consolidated the dawn state of the Black Realm. When he exited the time and space spinal, it just happened to be the dawn of the next day. He saw that Huang Yanchen and Duan Muxingling were still practicing in the courtyard. Zhang Yuochen looked into the distance and could only see two elegant shadows moving back and forth. Their footwork was elegant and the wind sounded like a dragon's roar as they moved at an astonishing speed. They lived up to their names of masters of the profound board. With just a day and night of practice, they had managed to get a feel for the shadow of the royal wind dragon. They were almost in the beginner realm. Their current steps were only similar to the shadow of the royal dragon. Only when they achieved resemblance in spirit would they be at the level of the beginner realm. Beginner, small success, succeed, and the perfection of martial arts. All martial techniques had these four realms. Between the two of them, Huang Yanjun was clearly faster than Duan Muxingling. In at most another day, she would reach the beginner realm. It was to her advantage that she opened a Gale sacred mark. The genuine qi in her body was of wind nature. Her physical quality and genuine qi were both highly compatible with the shadow of the royal wind dragon, and so her practice was obviously quicker. Phew. Duan Muxingling flew over to Zhang Yuochen's side. She used her sleeve to gently wipe the fine sweat on her forehead and said radiantly, "Junior apprentice brother, Sister Huang and I had a discussion. We think it is more suitable to practice this technique in the wild where there is wind. Dragon Martial Temple is all flat ground and there is very little breeze. It is not suitable for practicing this high-level martial technique." Zhang Yuochen nodded and asked, "So, what do you plan to do?" Duan Muxingling replied, "There is a valley in Omen Ridge called Devil's Wind Valley. Hurricanes are common there and it's the perfect place to practice the shadow of the royal wind dragon. Would you like to come with us?" Zhang Yuochen asked, "How far is that valley from the western campus?" Huang Yanjun walked over and said, "Devil's Wind Valley is about 200 kilometers away. Given our speed, if we rush the whole way, we could be there in an hour. We are just unsure if you can keep up with us." Zhang Yuochen smiled and said, "My cultivation has already reached the dawn state. Although that is still some distance away from you, I shouldn't hold you back. You just broke into the advanced stage of the Black Realm. How could you have already reached the dawn state?" Duan Muxingling had some disbelief as she looked at Zhang Yuochen with doubt. Huang Yanchen said, "He received 10 drops of half-holy water. Given his absorption speed of half-holy water, it shouldn't have been a difficult matter to reach the dawn state in such a short time. Half-holy water is, after all, a treasure that is very efficient for refining the body and increasing the size of one's qi lake. In the lower realms, it has very obvious effects on cultivation. Following the development of one's cultivation, the efficiency of half-holy water to increase cultivation gets weaker." Zhang Yuochen agreed with Huang Yanchun's words. When he was in the advanced state, he absorbed 3 drops of half-holy water to reach the dawn state. Although he still had 8 drops of half-holy water, it would not be enough to reach the medium state. So, he planned to use other pills first to practice the genuine qi in his qi lake to completion, and then take the 8 drops of half-holy water to break through to the medium state. That was not to say that half-holy water was not powerful medicine, as the main purpose of half-holy water was not to increase cultivation. "Senior apprentice sisters, I will go back and pack some things." Zhang Yuochen thought about Blackie and was not at ease about leaving him alone in the western campus. If there was no one to control him, who knew what trouble he would cause? "We'll wait for you outside of the main gates of the school." "You'd best be quick," Huang Yanjun said. Zhang Yuochen returned to Earth number 1 and opened the study door. As expected, he saw Blackie sitting on a chair, intently reading a book. "Blackie, I'm going to Omen Ridge to practice. You must come with me," Zhang Yuochen said. "Okay. I also want to tame a familiar. If I could tame a rose finch, that would be good. It's a pity that my cultivation is locked in the yin-yang wooden glyph. There's no way I can tame a rose finch. I can only tame some lower-level savage beasts. I guess I'll wait to do that." Blackie jumped down from the chair, clasped his book, and walked with Zhang Ruochen toward the outside of the western campus. Zhang Ruochen and Blackie had just left the western campus when the news reached the ears of Prince Huo Crossing. "You're sure that Zhang Ruochen left the western campus alone?" Prince Huoxing suddenly stood up, and his eyes glittered with cold murderous intent. A student thought and replied, "With a cat." "It's not necessary to report about a cat." Prince Huoxing's face revealed a cold smile, and said to himself, "Zhang Ruochen, Zhang Ruochen, you don't take the path to heaven, but beat against the doors of hell. While you remained in the western campus, I could not act against you. But now that you have left, death is the only end that awaits you. This time, I will personally kill you." The student was a little doubtful and said, "Even Feng's Island died at the hands of Zhang Ruochen. Given your majesty's cultivation, you probably can't kill him." "Idiot." Prince Huoxing glared at him and said, "Do you think that I will strike personally?" The square commandery has 400,000 troops stationed around Omen Ridge. I only need to go into one of the camps and choose an elite warrior to them. Killing Zhang Ruochen would be like shooting fish in a barrel. Not long after Zhang Ruochen had left the western campus, Prince Huoxing also left. He headed toward a battalion that was camped a few hundred kilometers away. "Senior apprentice sisters, let's head out now." Zhang Ruochen saw Duan Muxingling and Huang Yanqin on a mountain outside of the western campus.